to me away.
Hi everyone, and welcome to the Shanty Show, the show about sea shanties. I'm Stefan.
I'm James.
I'm Tim.
I'm Richard, and we're Pressgang Mutiny.
We have a great episode lined up for you today. Our guest is Mr. Seán Dagher. Now, you might know Seán from his regular YouTube series, Shanty of the Week, but if you haven't seen that yet, then you'll definitely recognize his voice from his participation on a number of video game soundtracks, most notably Assassin's Creed Black Flag. So with no further ado, let's go!
Storm along and around we'll go.
Storm, storm along.
Oh, storm along and around we'll go.
Storm along, me Johnny.
Oh, stormy was a captain bold.
Storm, storm along.
A grand old man from the days of old.
Storm along, me Johnny.
Oh, stormy loved a sailor's song.
Storm, storm along.
His voice was true and his heart was strong.
Storm along, me Johnny.
But now old Stormy's dead and gone.
Storm, storm along.
We marked the place where he was gone.
Storm along, me Johnny.
I wish I was old Stormy's son.
Storm, storm along.
I'd build a ship of 1,000 tons.
Storm along, me Johnny.
I'd sail this wild world round and round.
Storm, storm along.
With gold and silver I'd be found.
Storm along, me Johnny.
For 50 years we'd sail the seas.
Storm, storm along.
We'd have no gales but a good stiff breeze.
Storm along, me Johnny.
Oh, storm along and around we'll go.
Storm, storm along.
Oh, storm along and around we'll go.
Storm along, me
Johnny. Storm along, me Johnny.
Amazing. Thank you, Seán, and welcome to the Shanty Show. We're thrilled to bits to have you here. And I wonder if we could just start by tell us a little bit about that song.
It's just one of the many versions of Storm Along, and about Alfred Bulltop Storm Along and the myths and the legends surrounding him. So he got lots of songs written about him, and the verses got used in many different songs. And he was sometimes confounded with General Taylor, with Zachary Taylor. Now I think Zachary's down to being the third worst American president in history. He was the worst for a long time. So that's just a nice variation of that I found, and I really liked the melody. So
Yeah, when we were just chatting before, we were thinking, oh, Storm Along John, great, we know a few versions of that. And then, as often happens with shanties, it's a version you've never heard before, but that's a great way to start us off. So I really appreciate it.
great.
Why don't we, I'd love to dive in. So for those that, haven't come across you yet on YouTube or through your other projects, they inevitably will if they're going down the shanty rabbit hole. And I want to talk about one of your recent projects, the Shanty of the Week. The Shanty of the Week. I'd love to know just, how did that come about? What kind of reaction have you been getting from it? And we could talk about this a little bit later on, but the approach that you take to it, because it's this cool combination of, singing, obviously, but also educational content, not just about the song and what it means, but also how to sing it in the various parts. So if you could tell us a bit about how did that all come about and what made you decide to do it, I'd love to hear it.
Well, when all of gigs were canceled early in the pandemic, we sat around and did nothing for a long time, and that was interesting. And then gigs started getting booked again over the course of the summer, and so that was fun. But then when it all got canceled again, I thought, well, I need to find a gig that is uncancelable. So I thought, sitting alone in my basement, hollering, nobody can stop me from doing that. that's why I started the Shanty of the Week, and I didn't know how long I was gonna go. I didn't know what people would think of it. I didn't even know what I was gonna say or how I was gonna do it. But I just on the first one I thought, well, I better give a little bit of background about the song, because I'd found this background about it and found it interesting, and then I thought I would explain about how to. It was just sort of off the cuff, It was a one take. Hi, my name is Seán, and here's the song. But I decided to just stick with it, and for the second week, I came up with a theme song, because that sort of map image at the beginning, I thought it was missing something. So for the second week, I had the theme song there. And actually, I was surprised that the theme song has become, well, you quoted it yourself. So, the Shanty,
Way,
the Shanty,
way,
the
Shanty of the Week. Way.
My wife always makes fun of me because I don't say the K properly. I didn't say the K properly at the end of the Shanty of the Wee. So you'll notice in the closing, which has become the closing theme, which was for 1 week the opening theme, the K's at the end of the Shanty of the Week are extremely well pronounced to avoid further ridicule.
And to prove it to your wife.
Yeah.
Just so you know, I didn't notice. I don't think anyone else or your fans noticed. So now it's out there.
That was the origins of the Shanty of the Week, and people seem to like it, and then so I thought, well, I got more songs. I might as well keep going, and and then people started writing comments that are that I find kind of moving. That people saying things like, "Oh, these are difficult times, and I appreciate having these shanties to sing, and it helps me get through the week." So well, can't stop now, I guess.
That's a funny thing to me, is that these songs are from quite a long time ago, but they're finding a new life in this digital age, and especially right now during sort of this pandemic, it's really speaking to a lot of people.
Yeah.
Yeah, whether people want a minute-long TikTok or a 5 to 10 minute long Shanty of the Week or an hour-long Shanty podcast, whatever they want to find. Seán, the approach that you take to the Shanty of the Week and the content that you put in it, I find sort of really interesting, because you've given people multiple ways that they might be able to find something meaningful for them. They can either listen to the song itself. They can, if it's somebody who's interested in singing, you really break down the various parts of the song really well. And then you're also providing sort of interesting history nuggets or, definitions of words. Did that come together? Like, was that part of the original concept, or has that taken shape over time as you've, listened to the feedback and comments?
Yeah, it sort of came together over the first few episodes that I made. I was listening through to the, when I compiled the video, and I thought, I wonder what that word means. And because I'm not a sailor, I don't know all the terms. So I was looking them up for myself, and I thought, well, I might as well put them in for everybody, because, because people might be curious. And I had to make sure that I looked up everything myself in case I got asked. So then it was just like just put the information in, and put a diagram or a picture of what it is we're singing about. I think it helps people relate to the songs, and but the whole thing just happens. It was kind of a fluke. I just sort of, like all of us, when we make something, we make it how we would want to consume it. I thought, well, I would want to know what that means, so I put it up there. And then the red text, starts getting sassy sometimes, and because if I realize I'm blathering on too long, it'll say, "Okay, Seán, wrap it up," or something like that. And people have leapt to my defense. I had a couple of comments. People were quite angry at the red text for cutting me off.
That's amazing. How is it that you select the songs week on week? Is it just sort of what songs that have taken your fancy, or do you have this planned out and you're trying to explore different types of shanties? Is it how deliberate is it versus sort of just, this is what I'm feeling is right this week?
Yeah, it's definitely, this is what I'm feeling is right this week. Some there are songs that I know people have been waiting for, or songs that I knew would go over, be more popular. Like when I put out Lever Johnny, I knew that was going to be have lots of views, and so I try to space those ones out, the ones that I think are gonna get lots of reaction, because I don't want to sort of do all those at the beginning and then have sort of lesser known ones that nobody cares about. I kind of want to trick people into listening to lesser known songs by giving them the sort of anchor hits every few weeks.
Only 4 weeks away from Randy Dandy.
Yeah, well, and I in comments too, people say, "Oh, can we have this one?" And I say, "In time, it's in good time," you know. So that's how we do. But I have deliberately stuck to the more call and answer shanties. You know, there's the style of capstan shanty which is kind of like a 4-line verse and then a 4-line chorus, which is like a regular folk song. Sure, it's used as a shanty. You know, something like the Wellerman, which is less sort of shantyman and crew exchanges. So I'm really concentrating on the ones that in my opinion are more sort of in that pure shanty structure, and then eventually I'll get to the other ones as well.
Yeah, we've discussed on previous shows with previous guests that line, the definite line between the structure of the work songs versus the ballads, right? And the ballads that in popular shanty culture might get lumped into the work song tradition.
Yeah.
And it's always interesting. But yeah, to your point, it's always fun to work with the strict call and answer structure. It really is at the core of what we do with singing shanties.
Yeah, that's the most fun part. I mean, those, the other structure of songs, so the more folk song ballad structure, whatever you call it, was no doubt used right at capstan or pumping, right? Those songs were shanties with the same purpose, to keep the time. So I wouldn't say that they're not shanties, but and I will do them. But first, I'm getting through all the ones I like of the other structure.
Well, I guess speaking of Lever, Johnny Lever, I was recalling with Richard a few years ago, we were in Ottawa, kind of late at night overlooking the Rideau Canal, and a few of us were there singing shanties, and someone came up to us and said, "Oh, do you guys know Lever, Johnny Lever?" And I was like, "What? Yes, but how do you know this song?" And then they kind of sheepishly said, "Well, there's this video game I've been playing, And I was like, "Oh, I have the same game at home myself, Assassin's Creed Black Flag."
I thought I heard the old man say, "Leave her, Johnny, leave her. Tomorrow ye will get your pay, and it's time for us to leave her. Leave her, Johnny, leave her. Oh, leave her, Johnny, leave her. For the voyage is long and the winds don't blow, and it's time for us to leave her."
I was a huge fan myself of the Assassin's Creed franchise from its inception, and then we started singing shanties. James brought me into the fold, and we were at it for, I don't remember if it was half a year or nearly a year, and then the game dropped, and I was delighted. So I have to thank you many years later for all of that entertainment. I've been singing along with you for much longer than I don't even want to say how many hours I put into that game. Gosh, it's a good one. So I want to ask a few questions about that as a fan of the franchise. First off, how did they find you? How did that relationship come about?
Well, so Ubisoft has a pretty big office here in Montreal.
Yeah.
And the music producer was a guy called Dave Gossage, who plays in the Neff project. But he's like he does film scores, and he does jazz recordings. He's a general guy, but he also plays in pubs, in Irish pubs, and well, he did when that existed. And I've been playing with Dave for the last 15 or 20 years off and on, but the last 10 years, it wasn't long after that Dave said, "Oh, I might have a gig for you recording some stuff for a video game." And I was like, "What? Whatever. This isn't going to be a big deal. This isn't going to change the course of my life."
Yeah, and there you go. It
Who
was,
cares?
and it was interesting because I think that over the past decades, right, whether it's different types of folk music, but particularly sea shanties or maritime music, have had little blips. Yeah. The most recent shanty talk obviously being probably one of the biggest one, maybe lending itself to the medium and the sheer reach of social media these days. But Assassin's Creed was certainly one of those blips where a whole bunch of people that previously perhaps had not been exposed to this kind of music heard it and certainly latched on, and it created a whole little scene unto itself. To James's point, we heard this guy just come up to us and ask us for a tune while we were singing Late One Night by the Rideau Canal in Ottawa. We got the same thing at gigs in Toronto, and it started a little thing. So did you expect that kind of cultural swell out of this funny little video game project in Montreal?
No, but I tell you, I didn't expect it, but it really gave me a sort of a good feeling about people's ability to or openness to liking music that they're exposed to. I'm sure all of the sort of video game audience, or the people who came to Shanties through video games, I don't know how many of them, probably almost none, would have got to Shanties on their own. But once it was presented to them, how many thousands, millions of people were then saying, oh, I do like this. This is not something I've heard on the radio, or this is not something I would have found otherwise. But now that I'm hearing it, I love it. And that's great. I felt so good that people liked it, and there was nothing fancy about it, right? We weren't tarting them up. It was really basic versions, So I was encouraged. But the first time that I had an inkling that there was going to be something, it was going to be something more than that gig, was on AC3 when I did Hall on the Bowlen, and someone made a video out of that and put it on YouTube, and the image was some guy sweeping a boat, right? Just the boat, it wasn't sailing, the boat was just kind of hanging out, and there was me singing Hall on the Bowlen with the harmonies and the string pads, the orchestral string pads under it.
Hall on the Bowlen, Kitty is my darling. Hall on the Bowlen, hall.
And it was beautiful. It was like, the image was beautiful, and what they had done, I mean, the song is beautiful, but what they had done with the strings and everything, I was like, whoa, someone made a rock video of something I did, I couldn't believe it. And Dave, the flute player, he wrote to me and he said, Seán, you're going to be a star. And he put the thing in there, and I was like, haha, Dave, don't be a jerk. But that was when I first realized that, okay, no, this is going beyond the game.
Yeah, there's something about it that really touched people. I think that, to your point, there was a few gigs where a group of kids that had heard of Shanties from the game were showing up to our shows in Toronto and in and around, and you'd see them and just the joy that it brought them, and they'd be singing along, and then late into the second set we get them up on stage to sing a little bit with us, and it was something that really, like, otherwise they may not have been exposed to that kind of social singing, to that kind of experience, and yeah, it brings a lot of joy. It's really wonderful. Yep. Yeah. So speaking of bringing joy, it sounds like you had so much fun recording if you listen to the soundtrack in the game. So can you give us a bit of an insight into how did that go? How was the time in the studio, you and your friends? It sounds like you had a blast. So tell us the story. How did that go?
Yeah, we did have a blast. We had to, Dave would be in the booth saying, okay guys, now do like a straight pass, just sing it, and then we would layer on, so we'd sing it and we'd sing it a couple times, and if someone messed, if whoever was singing lead would mess up, then we'd have to start again. But after a couple takes, we'd usually have something that we could work with, and then layering on the passes was the was the fun part. Okay, do another one. Okay, now do another one where everyone's singing high. Now do another one where everyone's singing low. Okay, now do one where everyone's singing drunk, right? This is on top of the existing one. We called it the drunk pass. That was always the most fun. And sometimes we'd go over the top, and they'd be like, no, you can't, But then we're all trained musicians as well, so we'd say, well, Dave, can we do one with harmonies? Like this is a beautiful song, like for instance, Labor Johnny or Hall in the Bowlen. Can we do one with no, you can't, no harmonies, no, that's not. You're pirates, no harmonies. Okay. And sometimes he would let us do harmonies a little bit, you know. So we do like little drones and nothing fancy, you know.
Yeah.
And sometimes say no, do it again, less harmony or something, or I remember him thinking, who's singing harmony? Who was singing harmony on that one? You're pirates. Oh, sorry, Dave. I couldn't help it. but the thing, we did crack up after the drunk takes. It was always the challenge to like keep a little bit straight faced for the whole take, you know? And we'd go in and we'd do that, like we'd you know, the whole doing the song would last, you know, 15 or 20 minutes max, right, for one song, and then we'd move on to the next song. And so there are days where we would, you know, in a 4-hour session we'd get through 15 songs or something, or yeah. So it went by pretty fast, but it was a lot of fun, you know. And
how many days in all to get it all down?
oh, I don't know. It was like 2-3 days here, 2-3 days there. It was always, you know, it wasn't all together in a block. Sometimes maybe we'd do a couple days in a row, but it was always like, you know, Dave calling up, we need to go to the studio tomorrow. I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
So
is it true that pirates can't harmonize?
I don't think
that when one becomes a pirate, they lose that ability.
No, I think that's bullshit. But he was the boss, so.
I think we have a bone to pick with that boss, because we, through our research, have learned Hugel himself said that some of those shantymen were beautiful singers that could sing stunning harmonies. So, you know, maybe that typical picture. I don't know. Maybe we need to do a remix of the whole album with your artistic license in place.
Well, yeah. I mean, you know, they're going for something that their audience would, you know, they in a lot of ways they're trying to be historically accurate, but they were also portraying something that they wanted to convey, which was not a choir, you know.
Yep.
The first one we did was AC3, and so we didn't have any idea, but then when we were recording for Black Flag, we knew it was a spin-off of AC3. It started Black Flag started as just being like a sort of an add-on. There's the name for it in video games, where it's just a little sort of
expansion pack.
Yeah, that's
something
right.
like that. Yeah,
exactly. Black Flag started as an expansion pack of AC3, but when they saw how popular the shanties were in AC3, because in AC3 we were British soldiers, we were American soldiers, we were tavern musicians, and we were sailors, but only for a few songs. But when they saw how the shanties, the sailor songs caught on, like, oh, okay, hang on. So they expanded the expansion pack to be its own full game.
Now it's interesting, Seán, you're mentioning this attention to keeping this historically accurate, and at the same time, the time period that the game is set in is sort of, the shanties are anachronistic to that time period, really.
Dave verified that every song could be attested prior to the date that the game was supposed to be set. He makes sure that he could find a record of that song from before that date.
Interesting.
And so we had to change the names of some of the towns in the songs. If the town wasn't established by the date of the game, we had to sing about a different town. Like
cool.
I think we substituted Mobile. We took out Mobile in a bunch of songs and put in Montego, like Mobile Bay. We put in Montego Bay because Mobile hadn't been founded yet at the time of the game.
Seán, you mentioned about the Dave leading the arrangements and not wanting to go too far down the path of harmonies and too many harmony layers. You've taken a different approach with the Shanty of the week, and what I enjoy about it is there's actually some sort of surprising chords that sound sort of more modern to my ear, and I wanted to know if that's a deliberate attempt to sort of make the music a bit more accessible or musically interesting to modern ears, or just what your inspiration is and how you approach those arrangements.
It's pure self-indulgence. I just write whatever I want. And I know that if I were listening to the song, I wouldn't want to listen to the same harmony over and over again. And if I were singing the song, I would want to evolve the harmony. So I just write whatever I want, and I'm not making any attempt to be historical or to be deliberately modern. I'm sort of just using my own folk music background to write whatever I want.
Yeah, I really like that in your version of Leave Her Johnny, Leave Her. I love how the harmony sort of keeps evolving as we're listening. I appreciate that.
Yeah, like I said, that's just because it's it's otherwise it's short strophes, right? Short stanzas, like sometimes 12 or 16 seconds, and like, oh boy, I have to put 8 of these to make a 2-minute song. Jeez, what am I gonna do? Um, so so that's why I try and make it evolve and build up like an arrangement, like a piece of music, like, unto itself.
Well, Seán, I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about La Neff. One of the spots in Toronto that we really enjoy performing at is out in the beaches area called Castro's Lounge, and it's a real sort of hub of music and kind of like-minded supporters and that kind of thing, and it's kind of like an arts community in Toronto unto itself. And one of the locals there, Chad Pincus, is the first person to ask me, have I heard of La Neff? And I hadn't heard of you guys back then. So I've looked into you guys a little bit, but I was hoping you could tell us a bit more about the project and the different areas of interest that you guys have explored.
Sure. So La Neff, I've been involved with them for 15 years, but the project itself is now celebrating its 30th anniversary. It started in 1991. It was a band, and there were 3 main people: Sylvain Bergeron, lute; Claire Gignac, voice and recorders; and Vivienne Leblanc, also voice and recorders. And they put on these wild shows. They put on show, like music, but with costumes and staging and sets and like really big productions. So they did one called Music for Jeanne La Folle, for Joan of Arc. And there was one about the Garden of Earthly Delights, and the other one is the Percival, the Quest for the Grail. And so there were the 3 of them, but they were, lots of other musicians involved, and these sort of big sagas, and so really fancy stuff. And they were signed to what was then a really big record company called Dorian. They're big in the States, so they did sort of that mix between folk and early music, and that's what La Neff was doing then. It was basically unhistorically, it was anachronistic early music, with modern folk influences, which is great. That's kind of what I do. So they've been doing that for a long time. And then eventually the band, they kind of stopped playing altogether, but they kept the infrastructure of the company, which by then had built into something pretty big and organized. And each person on their own, each of the 3 founders on their own, went out and did their own kind of projects. So Sylvain was doing more early music stuff. He was playing with my wife Amanda, who's a Baroque cellist, Amanda Keysmat. So they did things with there. Claire Gignac was doing more contemporary wacko stuff, which is cool. And Vivienne was doing music for young audiences. But it was all under the auspices of La Neff. And so they would have a 4-concert season, 1 concert by each of them, and then an invited artist. And so I started getting invited to work on Sylvain's projects, to provide arrangements of folk songs, usually for the sort of early music ensembles. And eventually he said to me, he said, I need 4 show ideas from you, because we're planning our next 4 seasons, and so I want to put one of your show ideas in each of our seasons. I thought, well, how's it, Anyway, so basically they swallowed me, right? That I became, they ate me up, and I became part of their sort of administrative, artistic direction team. And a few other people too got swallowed up, and we all sort of put our ideas in. And it was great, because they would, one of the shows that I did, one of the first shows that I sort of directed with them was it's called Dowland in Dublin. So we took the music of John Dowland, sort of late 16th, early 17th century songwriter. And it's boring, like Renaissance music, really dry and drab. But it turns out that the songs can be turned into fun Irish sounding folk tunes, which is what I did. So that was an early sort of involvement for me in La Neff, of the crossing over between folk and classical music. And then after the Assassin's Creed thing, they said, what do you want? What show do you want to put on? So I gave a few ideas, and they said, no, that's terrible. No, that's terrible. No, not that. I said, well, we did do this thing with the 7 guys singing the shanties, and maybe we could do that. And they were like, oh yes, put that show on. So we put that show on in 2014, and then the album came out in 2017, and we've been touring it ever since. So that's the shanties part of Neff. But in the meantime, I've been doing other shows, like you mentioned, the French language sea songs. I was involved in the young audience aspect of it for a while, putting on shows with the woman who took over writing the stories, and they became audiobooks. So I recorded audiobooks of young audience stuff with Neff. So it's and at the same time, the contemporary stuff is still going on, and the classical stuff is still going on. So it's this really cool company that just sort of provides a home for homeless musicians, to put on their projects.
That's cool. And it really did strike me. It is a mixture, it seems like, early art music and folk music. And the only other thing I've ever really seen like that would be David Greenberg doing that Bach meets Cape Breton, probably about 30 years ago now. Yeah, that's right. Now I was curious, do you sort of approach it from, I mean, you strike me as someone who's interested in historical music as well, obviously. Do you feel that you approach it more kind of from a folk music perspective or an early music perspective, or are they kind of intertwined at this point?
I'm definitely a folk guy. Like, I have an interest in the early repertoire, but compared to people who are actually performance practice musicians, like my wife and everyone she plays with, Amanda's the Baroque cellist of a Baroque orchestra in Montreal. She's the principal cellist of a Baroque orchestra called Arion in Montreal, and she also freelances with all the other Baroque groups. Those guys it's a different thing, where like people say, oh, Seán, you're like into early music, but not at all in the same way. I'm into sort of pillaging the repertoire to sort of beat it up and turn it back into folk music. So that's where my interest comes. I have a bachelor's in music in composition and arranging, but from Concordia, the bad music school in Montreal. So I know the theory, and I know I can do the classical stuff, but I prefer to use the knowledge I have combined with the folk experience I have to make something which I think sort of sits in between.
Where are you typically finding your shanties, or you said beating up the repertoire to find stuff that you want to do? Where do you go to find stuff, and what makes a song stand out for you?
Well, I mean, I have all the same books as everybody else, right, on my bookshelf. So, and I find all the same recordings as everybody else. But I'm really shameless about sort of recombining, taking elements of different people's versions to make something new. I mean, I'm sure we're all doing that anyway, but I really try and avoid sort of, and I don't always succeed at this, but I try to avoid just taking someone, like I would rather not just take a Stan Hugel version and say, okay, I'm doing this version that Stan collected. I mean, sometimes I do, right? Sometimes I say, oh, well, that's really good just like that. I don't, but I think it's more interesting to say, like, I wonder if I were singing this, and if I had to sing this sort of day in and day out on a ship for 50 years, what would I do with it? And how can I condense that process into a week where I can sort of get to my own version of it more quickly? Geez, maybe I would take some words from this, and I often do. I'll be looking through Stan's book or through R.R. Terry or whoever, and so like, gee, I like this melody, but I can't use these words for whatever reason. You can think of lots of reasons why, right? So finding words from the same song or from another song even, and sort of mashing it up. So that's how I arrive sometimes at things that aren't they're a little bit new. But I'm sure other people have come to the same combinations themselves.
Well, I also like that you mentioned in Lever Johnny Lever that you can make up your own verses, which was really what sea shanties would have been like.
Oh yeah.
That's cool. That's something I feel that we've sort of forgotten in this attempt to be as historically accurate as possible. We've forgotten that this is really improvised lyrics to this music.
Yeah, and so speaking of songs that that have verses that we don't feel comfortable singing anymore, often I'll be like, oh, this is a great first line, but the second line is unsingable. So, how am I going to rework it? Or am I going to take the second line or another first line from another verse and put them together? Or am I going to, so it's a lot of sort of
Patchwork, I
poetic
guess.
gymnastics
Yeah,
to make a new version. But then you have a new version, which is great.
absolutely. Well, speaking of words, I'm kind of curious about, well, first of all, the name La Neff. So from what I can tell, it either means a sailboat or it's a part of a church. I'm guessing it's probably referring to a sailboat in this case.
Yeah, their logo for a long time was a boat. But one of them pointed out to me one time, they said, well, in either case, it's the sense of being transported elsewhere.
Okay.
So,
I like that. I was also curious about, I was reading about baratin de marin.
yeah.
Now, does that mean sailor's lingo? Is that what that means?
Baratin is like a spiel, like whatever he's prattling on about.
Okay.
Yeah.
And now, is that linked with La Neff, or is this a side
That's
project as
actually
well?
we were recording that album. I was recording vocals for that a couple days ago. Yeah, that's going to be coming out. I mean, we're just doing the final overdubs in the next couple of weeks here. So it's going to come out in the next 6 months or something.
Okay, we're looking forward to checking that out.
Yeah, it's a lot like a lot of the repertoire is in common with the show we did before, but I reconfigured it because there's a band called Les Charbonniers de l'Enfer. Those guys.
Yeah, they're a great group.
A cappella, and La Neff did an album with them. That was actually, I think, the first project I was involved with La Neff. So they sang, and I did some arrangements for the accompaniment that La Neff did. So that was in 2008 that album came out, and we started touring it again a couple of years ago. And when we went to France in 2019 with that show, and I said, we're there anyway. Let's take what the musicians that happen to be accompanying that show, and we'll make our own La Neff show and sell it to the same festival, right? Because they're paying for the plane tickets anyway. So it worked. And they were like, oh shit, now we've got to make a show.
That's awesome. Now that was that the Paintball Festival?
It was Paintball, yeah.
Can you tell us a bit about that? I remember Googling it many years ago and thinking this looks just fantastic. It looks like something we'd love to attend.
Yeah, you do want to attend it. It was amazing. It was like, I mean, the festival, yeah, it's cool around the harbor, and all the boats, and the boat that was a stage, and the kiosks and the town, and it was great. It was great. And to get to the boat where the gig was, where two of the gigs were, we went on another boat, which took us on a Zodiac. So we're there with our, with our instruments like the cello and the bouzouki and everything in our flight cases, and we had our life jackets on and our whiskey in our cups, and everything about it was great. We happened to be staying in a house that we rented that was nearby, so that was amazing. But the best part of Paintball, and I don't know if this is true of all the festivals, but the best part was the dining hall. Okay. There's a specific dining hall for the musicians or people who are invited, and so you line up with like a cafeteria style, and you get your tray and you sit down, and then there's the bar over there. And some days it was free, and sometimes it wasn't, and it was never expensive for the booze we drank. But all kinds of crazy things would happen in the dining hall, like after however many bottles of cider or whatever, someone at some table would start singing a sea shanty, and we're at a sea shanty festival, so the whole dining hall would join in and do the responses, like 400 people, right?
Wow.
I couldn't believe it. It was amazing. And and then somebody else at another table would take it up, So at one point on the second day, I was like, okay, this is great. And I felt myself standing up, and I didn't know why. I didn't know what was going on. And my bandmates were there looking at me, they're like, uh-oh, it's happening, everybody. It's just a matter of time. It's like, next thing you know, I was standing up, and the room kind of hushed and was looking at me, and I was like, okay, here I go. And I belted out all in the bowling. But then brass bands would come in, and everyone would be up dancing in the aisles. And this is the entertainment for the entertainers, right? This is not for the public. It was amazing. yeah, I'm really, really happy I got to do that.
This feels like a great time to sing another song.
Oh yeah, okay. Okay, so this is a version of Lowlands Low. I don't know if you know this one. Some of these words are similar to the Stormalong words, and the melody is similar to Old Maui. It's kind of a cool mashup.
Cool.
So, and there's a chorus. So the Shantyman lines are, our packet ship is the island lass, and you guys go, Lowlands, Lowlands, Lowlands Low. The old man's howling at the main top mast, Lowlands, Lowlands, Lowlands Low. Lowlands boys away, oh, Lowlands, Lowlands, Lowlands Low. So
that's interesting. I've heard that shanty, but I've never heard that third line, that kind of chorus line. That's very cool.
Yeah, so I'm not sure if it's a chorus or if it's a third shantyman line. If it's a third shantyman line, it's one that stays the same every time, so it probably would get put into a chorus.
That's cool. Yeah.
Lowlands Low. Our packet ship is the island lass, Lowlands, Lowlands, Lowlands Low. The old man's howling at the main top mast, Lowlands, Lowlands, Lowlands Low. Lowlands boys away, oh, Lowlands, Lowlands, Lowlands Low. The cook is ringed in soldier's clothes, Lowlands, Lowlands, Lowlands Low. Where he got 'em from, nobody knows, Lowlands, Lowlands, Lowlands Low. Lowlands boys away, oh, Lowlands, Lowlands, Lowlands Low. Gives us bread as hard as stone, Lowlands, Lowlands, Lowlands Low. It can break your teeth, it can shatter your bones, Lowlands, Lowlands, Lowlands Low. Lowlands boys away, oh, Lowlands, Lowlands, Lowlands Low. We'll haul 'em high and we'll let 'em dry, Lowlands, Lowlands, Lowlands Low. We'll leave 'em swinging in the sky, Lowlands, Lowlands, Lowlands Low. Lowlands boys away, oh, Lowlands, Lowlands, Lowlands Low. I wish I had 10,000 pounds, Lowlands, Lowlands, Lowlands Low. I'd buy a ship and I'd sail around, Lowlands, Lowlands, Lowlands Low. Lowlands boys away, oh, Lowlands, Lowlands, Lowlands Low. I'd fill her up with grub and gin, Lowlands, Lowlands, Lowlands Low. We'd stay in the port that we were in, Lowlands, Lowlands, Lowlands Low. Lowlands boys away, oh, Lowlands, Lowlands, Lowlands Low. I'd feed you well and I'd raise your pay, Lowlands, Lowlands, Lowlands Low. I'd fill your cups 3 times a day, Lowlands, Lowlands, Lowlands Low. Lowlands boys away, oh, Lowlands, Lowlands, Lowlands Low. Lowlands boys away, oh, Lowlands, Lowlands, Lowlands Low.
Amazing.
That's
cool.
That was a good song.
And where did you find that version, or is that one of the kind of cobbled together versions?
Yeah, cobbled together, yeah.
All right, I like that a lot.
Good cobbling. That was great cobbling.
Thanks.
Yeah. Well, Seán, it's been just a fantastic time. I've learned a lot and really enjoyed chatting with you. For the audience, where else can we hear you? What kind of projects do you have coming up next?
Well, aside from the Shanty of the Week, which is going to keep going for as many weeks as I can muster, there's the live concert we did with Neff and Corleone. It was performed in February 2020, and it was on YouTube for a little while and will be available somehow otherwise. But there's going to be a live album coming out in the fall of that show. So that's going to be good. There's the Baratin Marin, the French language maritime theme songs coming out from Neff, probably also in the fall. And those are the projects I'm working on. I mean, we don't know what else is happening. So
awesome. Well, we'll be watching for you. You certainly have a new bunch of fans here, and I know when we're ready to be back, we all get our jabs in the arm and we can be in those pubs in Montreal and all over. We're coming for a road trip, and for sure we just love to sing with you shoulder to shoulder in the flesh. Yeah. That'll be so much fun. Yeah,
absolutely.
Seán, thanks so much for your time today. We'll link everything up in the show notes so people know where to find you. And just personally, as a fan of Shanty of the Week, as a big fan of Assassin's Creed, and as a fellow Canadian shantyman, this has been a real treat for us. So I appreciate you taking the time out of your very busy schedule to chat with us.
Well, thanks for inviting me, and I appreciate the opportunity a lot. And it's really nice talking to you guys.
All right, thanks so much, Seán.
Thanks so much, Seán.
Bye, guys.
All right,
everybody. Thank you so much for joining us this week. We had an awesome time. As usual, come back here in a couple of weeks for the next episode. If you liked it, please please subscribe. Add any questions in the comments. And what a great time. Thank you so much. We'll see you next time.
Now we are ready to sail for the Horn. Way, hey, roll and go. Our boots and our clothes, boys, are all in the pond. To me, rollicking randy dandy, oh. Heave a pawl, oh, heave away. Way, hey, roll and go. The anchor's on board and the cable's all stored. To me, rollicking randy dandy, oh. Roll. Soon we'll be whopping around through the locks. Way, hey, roll and go. Where the pretty young girls all come down in their frocks. To me, rollicking randy dandy. Oh, heave a pawl, oh, heave away. Way, hey, roll and go. The anchor's on board and the cable's all stored. To me, rollicking randy dandy, oh. Come rest the bars, bullies, heave her away. Way, hey, roll and go. Soon we'll be rolling her way down the bay. To me, rollicking randy dandy, oh. Heave a pawl, oh, heave away. Way, hey, roll and go. The anchor's on board and the cable's all stored. To me, rollicking randy dandy, oh. Sing goodbye, Sonny, and sing goodbye, Sonny. Way, hey, roll and go. For we are the boys who can kick her through. Rollicking randy dandy, oh. Heave a pawl, oh, heave away. Way, hey, roll and go. The anchor's on board and the cable's all stored. To me, rollicking randy dandy, oh. Roll. Oh, man, stout captain and heave with the will. Way, hey, roll and go. And soon we'll be driving her way down the hill. To me, rollicking randy dandy, oh. Heave a pawl, oh, heave away. Way, hey, roll and go. The anchor's on board and the cable's all stored. Me rollicking randy dandy, oh. We're outward bound for Vallepo Bay. Way, hey, roll and go. Get cracking, me lads, it's a hell of a way. Me rollicking randy dandy, oh. Heave a pawl, oh, heave away. Way, hey, roll and go. The anchor's on board and the cable's all stored. To me, rollicking randy dandy, oh. To me, rollicking randy dandy, oh.